What's up, guys? Give everyone a few minutes to hop in, and then I'll get started. What's up, Eric? Shoot me that link if you don't mind. Nah, I haven't seen it. I don't know what you're talking about, actually. I've been out all day. Looks like it's just $10,000 for Ian. It's not too bad. Are these the comments about yeah, it just looks like the same stuff, right? That Kinsler got in trouble for the first time? Or he didn't really get in trouble for it, but it's the same stuff they were talking about. Yeah, it's just because the umpires decided to protest it with those wristbands that they had on. All right, I'm going to hop right in. I'm going to start with pitching. It's where I start every night. For those that haven't tuned in before, pitching's where I usually kick it off, and then I just go right in order: catcher, first base, second base, third base, shortstop, outfield. At the very end, I hit on player team stacks. So if you have any team stack questions, try to save them till the end of the segment. I stay on for about 30 minutes. I'll also touch on weather so that you guys are up to the minute on that. Pitching on Draftkings, from what I've seen, is a three-man race, according to my projections. The real question is whether or not you're going to pay up for Chris Archer. It's a tough decision to make. Archer overall has had a decent amount of success against the Blue Jays, but there's a few guys, most notably Kendrys Morales, that have had a lot of success against him. As of right now, I'm leaning towards not playing Chris Archer on DraftKings. I'll touch on Fanduel here in a minute, but on DraftKings, I'm leaning towards fading Chris Archer and going with a stack of Samardzija and Lance Lynn. I think Lance Lynn is almost guaranteed to be the chalk tonight. I think Shark will be lower owned. He's been struggling as of late. I just really like how AT&T Park neutralizes the Milwaukee Power Bats. I think that's a great route to go. I think Shark's going to bounce back in a big way. You could look at a guy like Jimmy Nelson. You could look at Charlie Morton for Houston, since the Nats don't have Bryce Harper. You can look at Danny Duffy against Colorado, although Colorado has been pretty evil to me whenever I target him with a pitcher. So I'm a little biased there. I really don't want to play anybody against Colorado, regardless of what stadium they're in. I've seen some buzz around Patrick Corbin. My projections do not like Patrick Corbin, but I think he's going to have some ownership tonight. Ricky Nolasco is a great tournament option. He's extremely cheap on DraftKings. I think he's down to 5.6K. I think you can throw him in tournaments and get some high upside bats and maybe pair him with a Chris Archer. Or maybe if you want to go with Carrasco. I really hate the matchup for Carrasco, but you can go that route. But on DraftKings, it's three guys for me. It's Chris Archer, it's Lance Lynn, and it's Jeff Samardzija. I'm not going to go any deeper than that. I'll touch on a few tournament guys at the end, but that's pretty much where I'm going to stick. I'm going to move on over to FanDuel and take a look at that. I would assume since Archer's around 10K on FanDuel that I'm probably going to go that route in cash games. Give me just 1 second. I'm pulling up my FanDuel projections. Let me check, Eric. Yeah, I think I got it this time. Yep. Worked the first try there. up, A-Rod? Yeah, Archer, my optimizer almost always takes the top pitcher on Fanduel. Nothing's different tonight. You're going to get consistency from Archer. You've got a decently high win probability due to the matchup. There's plenty of value bats over there. Matt Olson is 2.4K over there. I really like him, assuming he's in the lineup. Matt Kemp, Adam Jones, Schwarber, 3.5K. There's just no need to really pay down at pitcher on Fanduel and cash games. But if you want to do it in tournaments, I'm all for it. I would assume Lance Lynn. I'm trying to sort my projections here. Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with Lance Lynn tonight. He's going to be high owned pretty much everywhere. For those that are hopping in late, I mentioned Lance Lynn, Jeff Samardzija, and Chris Archer are the only three pitchers that I'm considering on Draftkings. On Fanduel, Shark actually rates really well. So does Lance Lynn. I've got them both at a 4x value. As far as points per dollar, they're rating higher than Archer, but there's plenty of value bats. And in cash games, I like the strikeout upside of Archer and the floor that he generates with that strikeout upside. So it's going to be Archer for me, but Samardzija and Lynn are a close second. I think you could roster either guy in cash and feel okay with it. It's just a matter of whether your bats outperform the value bats or not. I prefer to hit the chalk. Archer surely is going to be the chalk at that price point. So that's probably the route I'm going to go on Fanduel. I'm going to move on to catchers. I'm going to start with Draftkings, and then I'll make my way over to Fanduel. If anybody has questions about pitchers, go ahead and get them out now, and I'll try to touch base on them before I move on. For those watching on Facebook Live, if you want to download Periscope, it's a little more interactive. You can post questions in Periscope, and they'll kind of pop up on the screen, and I can answer them in live time. I do keep track of the comments on Facebook Live. For those that aren't following on Facebook, it's facebook.com/DFL Jericho. My optimizer on Draftkings pretty set on Chris Iannetta. The Diamondbacks are going to be popular tonight. I really like Iannetta's price point at 3.2K. If you want to pay up, I think it's Gary Sanchez. It's not really a debate there if you're going to pay up. But it looks like Chris Iannetta is going to get the nod for me on Draftkings, barring some crazy value opening up before locks. So Chris Iannetta, Gary Sanchez, Travis d'Arnaud you can make a case for, I suppose. Mitchell Garver from Minnesota, depending on his roster spot. But you don't need to go much deeper than that. Over on FanDuel, I'm pretty much seeing Iannetta across the board there. Iannetta's just underpriced, and the matchup is solid. So I really like Iannetta in all formats at catcher, FanDuel, and Draftkings. I think it's probably the way to go. I'm going to move on to first base. Again, if you have any pitcher or catcher questions, feel free to get them in. I try to squeeze all this into 30 minutes, but I'll answer y'all's questions as we move along here. Yeah, that is Steve G, I believe, Steve Wisconsin. The one that just did the gay purple devil face. First base, Kendrys Morales is somebody that I've got locked in pretty much everywhere. I'm not a big batter versus pitcher stat guy. I don't usually buy into it, but I've watched a lot of Morales at bats against Archer. I believe he's 16 of 28. I think the average there is like 560 or 570. His OBPS is 1.6. He has 3 home runs, 6 doubles, and 4 strikeouts, I believe. I don't have all the stats in front of me, but I looked at it just a bit ago, and that's what popped up. At 2.5K on DraftKings, I think I'm going to lock him in. I think he'll be low owned. I don't think a lot of people are going to chase the BVP against Archer. I think even if you're rostering Archer, you can lock in Morales. I think the price point is really cheap and allows you to get whoever you want, especially if you go with a Shark Lance Lynn combo. If you're going to pay up at the position, you don't buy into the BVP. I think you can go with Anthony Rizzo. I think across the industry, he's probably the top-rated bat. You're not going to get any argument from me. I think he's probably the guy to go to if you're going to pay down at pitcher and if you don't want to rock with Morales. There is a few other options. I'm trying to pull them up right now at first base, but Rizzo, Morales are the two guys for me. If you want to go into the mid-tier on DraftKings, Chris Davis is fairly priced. You've got Lucas Duda. in a reasonable matchup, price down. Trey Mancini, 3.6K, should have a reasonable roster spot. I think you're going to see a good amount of Orioles ownership again today, especially with point chasers coming out from yesterday. I'm going to move over to Fanduel. If anybody has first base Draftkings questions, feel free to get them in. But I'm going to go ahead and move to first base on Fanduel. Yeah, so it's going to depend on which pitcher you go with. If you pay down to Shark, I'm pretty sick of Goldie. I'm assuming that's what you're saying. They're not godly. Yeah, Goldie put up zeros on back-to-back nights, which is just unheard of. It was really frustrating yesterday. 0 for 5, I believe, including a double play. So that was irritating. Matt Olson, Logan Morrison, Yonder Alonso. Those are the 3 value bats on FanDuel at first base. If you're going to pay up, again, over there it's Anthony Rizzo. So if you're paying down at pitcher, if you're going with Shark, or if you're going with Lynn, then I think that you can probably afford to get Rizzo. I'm trying to see where Morales is on FanDuel real quick. My internet's moving really slow for some reason. Here we go. Okay. What's up, Robinson? Lord. I'm just going to assume, yeah, there we go. Yeah, Morales is 2.4K on FanDuel. I like him, as a pivot off of a guy like Olsen, if you want to go that route. But Olsen's probably going to be more popular. A lot of people don't like rostering hitters against their pitcher, but I think when what's up, Chris? I think when the BVP is this dominant against one guy, I think if you're rostering Archer, it's almost a better idea to roster Morales, because if there's somebody that's going to get to Archer tonight, it's going to be Morales, and you might as well capitalize on it. I think Morales is almost guaranteed to get 5 to 10 fantasy points. And I think he has good home run potential tonight as well. So on FanDuel, I'm going to go against the optimizer there and probably run with Morales. But again, if you're paying up, Anthony Rizzo at first base. Second base there's not really a debate here on second base. On FanDuel, it's Jonathan Scope. On Draftkings, it's Brian Dozier. I guess you could roster Moncada on Draftkings, but I'm probably going to stick with Dozier. He's rating incredibly well. 4.6K is a relatively good price point for him. You usually see him around the 5K, even above 5.2, 5.3. I really like him leading off in that matchup. My projections aren't updated for Jorge Polanco. I saw him hitting in the 3-hole. I won't have an update for that until after I get off of here. But when I do, you can ask me questions on Twitter, or if you're a subscriber in the chat room, and I'll touch on Polanco. I would assume him being in the 3-hole, being red hot in that matchup, especially with shortstop eligibility, that he's going to find his way in the shortstop conversation tonight. As of right now, Rosales is the top shortstop value for me on DraftKings. If you're paying up, I like Lindor or Beckham. There's not a whole lot else to talk about there. I'm not talking about football right now. This is a baseball breakdown. The title is MLB Daily Fantasy Breakdown. But yeah, shortstop, there's not much else to talk about there. On FanDuel, there's a lot of options that rate about the same. Gene Segura, Tim Beckham, Eduardo Escobar, and again, Polanco is going to find his way in that conversation. But I believe Polanco is third base eligible on FanDuel and shortstop eligible on DraftKings, which is really weird. But he'll find his way into that conversation. No, I don't like Trevor Story. I don't even like Trevor Story when he's in Coors. I think he's a horrible baseball player. He had a great year last year, and now everyone's just overhyped. Devers is a great tournament pivot. I'll kind of get to those at the end. I try to break down cash games first so that everybody can get their cash game in, cash game lineups, and then I'll kind of make my way over to tournaments at the end of the segment. I don't like Drury's not rating well at all. The Diamondbacks are going to be popular across the industry. I tend to have different projections than everybody else. I tend to have a lot of low-owned guys. It hurt yesterday, but it seems to pay off a fair amount, especially in single-entry tournaments and things of that nature. But yeah, 2.5K on Fanduel. Jurias, he's a 3.11 value. Again, that's solid. I'm about to touch on third base, but second base, I just like scope. I just like paying the extra money and getting scope tonight on Fanduel. I don't know if you're talking Fanduel or Draftkings, but on Draftkings it's Dozier for me, and it's not really close compared to everybody else. Third base. It's been okay. I mean, it's up and down. Baseball's up and down in general. It's just never going to change. I'm going to have to plug my phone in and turn this Periscope feed sideways, so give me just a minute. There we go. Baseball's up and down. It's probably the worst daily fantasy sport. I won't stay on the subject too long, but the variance is insane. I think you have to, play a lot of GPP, I guess. I've been mixing in a lot more tournaments and qualifiers. But yeah, football's coming up. Can't wait. And then basketball starts early this year, which is extremely exciting. And they're bringing late swaps back on DraftKings. So third base, my optimizer is basically sucking Chris Bryant's dick. Excuse my language. But Chris Bryant's in every single lineup on DraftKings. And then on FanDuel, it's going with Machado, Longoria, or Kyle Seager. All three of those guys. I'm seeing Longoria in the most optimals, but that's mostly due to price point. I think I would prefer to get Manny Machado in there if I could. My top optimal on FanDuel is getting Machado in. So that's the route that I'm looking at right now. Again, it's going to depend if you pay up or if you pay down at pitcher. Your roster construction completely depends on that decision on FanDuel. If you look at the price difference between Archer and Samardzija or Lance Lynn, it's only $2,000. And I don't think you can justify dropping down in cash games to get $2,000 worth of bats. Because what is $2,000 worth in bats? I mean, really, what is it? It's like, jury to scope or, I don't know, Kemp to Judge. It's like it's one or two bats. And I just think Archer's strikeout potential is way too high, and he's just way more trustworthy than Lance Lynn or Jeff Samardzija or Corbin or anybody else that you're looking to trot out there. So my advice on FanDuel is to play Archer. As of right now on DraftKings, I prefer to actually drop off of Archer, but that's because there's a huge price difference between Archer and Lynn and Shark. I think you're looking at about 4K in price difference, which gets you two pretty significant upgrades, as opposed to FanDuel where you just get two basic upgrades or one massive upgrade. I'm going to move on to the outfield. If you guys have any questions about the infield, pitchers, catchers, be sure to get them in before the end of the segment. Whoever's just spewing those hearts out, it's really distracting. Thank you. On FanDuel, there's a lot of value, guys. I'm seeing Kyle Schwarber on both sides, FanDuel and DraftKings. So there's a lot of merit to rostering Schwarber tonight. His price point's affordable. Aaron Judge is underpriced on FanDuel at 3.8K. I have no issue with rostering him. Adam Jones, 3K on FanDuel. Kemp, 2.7K. All these guys are making my optimals right now. Over on DraftKings, you've got Boog Powell, who's actually rating as a really solid value. Matt Joyce, I'm seeing a lot of athletics in the outfield, Matt Joyce and Chris Davis. Trout, you can't imagine that Trout would have 3 bad games in a row. That same reasoning could be used for Goldschmidt. It's just not likely, and it's probably not going to happen. But Kyle Schwarber, Max Kepler, those are the top outfield guys today on DraftKings. I'm going to touch on tournament stacks really quick. If anybody has questions, feel free to get them in, and I'll just kind of answer them as we move through here. I'm monitoring the Facebook comments, and I'm also monitoring the Periscope. So stacks, I think the Orioles are going to be incredibly popular again. I don't think, I try to avoid the chalk, and the Orioles are going to beat chalk. They are kind of hot, and they are in Camden Yards, I believe, and they're facing a fly ball pitcher for the most part. So tough to deny that they make a lot of sense. My optimizer prefers the Cubs, so I'm going to go ahead and recommend the Cubs as my number one stack. I think they'll be less owned or lower owned than the Orioles, which is great for tournaments. I really like the Yankees. I think they're underpriced for one, and they make a ton of sense. And then the Diamondbacks. Those are my top three stacks: Yankees, Diamondbacks, and Cubs. Not in that order. Yeah, that looks solid. I like that lineup a lot, actually. For anybody that missed the stacks, Cubs, Yankees, Diamondbacks. I'm not a big Indians fan. I've got them rated as my fifth best stack right now, and I actually don't have the Rangers anywhere to be seen. I'm going to pull up my Vegas odds page and kind of see who's trending down, because I do like to target a team that's trending down on the implied run totals, because it typically drops their ownership across the industry. A lot of times it's warranted, but sometimes they just make a mistake. As much as I like Archer on Fanduel, I really like stacking against him in tournaments. He's somewhat home run prone, and I think he can still have a game and give up, a decent game and give up 2 to 3 home runs. And if you nail the right home runs, the Jays aren't going to be owned at all. Their run totals come down from 3.8 to 3.3. It's the lowest on the slate by a pretty wide margin. So I think there's a lot of merit to rostering the Blue Jays. In tournaments, of course. You don't want to go that route in cash. But if you can, guess some home runs, I would lock in Morales to that stack. And then I'd probably try to put, Donaldson or Bautista in with one of their, other power bats. Blue Jays are the contrarian stack. And it's pretty obvious. The contrarian stack's usually going to be the team going against the ace. So pay attention to that. You can really make some money doing that. Obviously, it's a long-term strategy, because more often than not, the ace is going to do well. But there was one night not too long ago, I think it was a Scherzer Sale slate. Chris Sale got obliterated, and Max Scherzer got hurt or scratched. I think he got hurt in the first inning, or maybe the second inning. So you can make some serious money getting low ownership against aces. It's a great strategy in baseball, but you have to have the bankroll to justify it. You have to be able to lose, 10 to 11 times before you win once. So keep that in mind. If you do have a bankroll that big, that's a highly recommended tournament strategy. Anybody have any other questions? Probably going to hop off here pretty soon, get updated projections up. You can always reach me on Twitter at dailyftsylines, or on Facebook, facebook.com/DFL Jericho. For anybody that isn't using the service, I'm offering a free 3-day trial for new subscribers. So just shoot me a message, and I'll get you the coupon code for that. I don't see any questions coming in, so I think I'm going to go ahead and hop off. Good luck, and thanks for tuning in. For those that missed the beginning, this will be posted on Periscope, Facebook, and I'm going to upload it to YouTube. So catch you guys later. Thanks for tuning in.